Head of Xbox Game Studios Matt Booty has come out of hiding and did a pretty impressive interview. During this interview, he admitted Xbox hasn't done the quality of games that Sony has, and asserted that he wishes he could find their footing as well as PlayStation Studios. Now, I can't wait to dissect this interview and also find out what you guys think. This is definitely a video you don't want to miss. Hey there everyone, I'm the Crapgamer, and of course this is Crapgamer Reviews, your home for gaming news, opinions, reviews, and more. You'll probably notice a few cool changes around here, but that shouldn't stop you from giving us a like and possibly consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some of your free time with me and my silly YouTube channel. Now, ever since I was a little kid playing on my very first NES, I knew how important exclusive games were. And it became even more important as the years rolled on. I think particularly when you're younger and your parents might only be able to buy you one console, you have to make sure that that console that you pick is the cool one. The one that your friends all have and the one they'll actually play on. Mostly I stuck to Nintendo early on, but once the Sega Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog hit, I knew I had to have one. I became a Sega fan ever since that point. I made sure to always buy the Sega consoles, and in fact, the Sega Dreamcast was the first console I did a midnight launch for. That console really set the tone for me personally and helped me realize my love of gaming online and just love of video games in general. I had gone through a little phase where I had kind of gotten tired of playing video games, and it was just something that I just wasn't really into. I was working all the time, really kind of focused on doing those type of things, and I think it was when I first saw a Dreamcast kiosk, I was like, whoa, this is different than anything I've ever seen before in my life. And I believe it was NFL 2K that just looks so much different than anything I'd played. I'd been playing on a PlayStation as well as a Nintendo 64, and Madden just couldn't compare. Everything looked blocky. This was the first time where I saw like such a huge leap, and I knew I had to get into it, and I never looked back since that point in time. Now, if we fast forward to 2013, I bought an Xbox One on the basis of the exclusive game lineups. What a fantastic first year that console had. Think about it. Forza Motorsport 5, Dead Rising 3, Killer Instinct, Zoo Tycoon, Rise Son of Rome, Titanfall, Forza Horizon 2, Sunset Overdrive, as well as Halo, the Master Chief Collection. This was the very stark contrast to what Sony had to offer that first year, which was Killzone Shadowfall, Knack, and Infamous Second Son. So it was an easy choice to make, and the rest, as they say, is history. But then kind of something changed within Microsoft during this time, and they basically stopped producing exclusive games. The second half of the generation was filled with mediocre AA games and filler that reviewed very, very poorly. So it was no real shock that Xbox One failed to make and kind of catch on with a larger audience. But a lot of people refused to accept the fact that Sony was putting out much better games. Nowadays, of course, even Xbox executives admit PlayStation's superiority where the exclusive games are concerned. And I have to admit, that's why I've been on PlayStation much more than Xbox these last few years. I know a lot of people still look at it and look at me as something of a turncoat or somebody that's switched sides or whatever, but really it just comes down to the games. It doesn't matter what game system it is. You know, it has to have the great games. It has to have the games that really make it worthwhile. And with that being said, Xbox Game Studios boss Matt Booty had some rather enlightening things to say in his recent interview. Matt Booty discussed Microsoft's efforts to compete with Sony in terms of first-party games, acknowledging that Xbox has quote-unquote not been out in front when it comes to big tentpole games like Sony is known for. Speaking to Kinda Funny, Booty praised Sony for what it has been able to achieve, going on to say Microsoft hopes to deliver more of these types of games in the future. He says, and I quote, "Hats off to Sony. Their studio system and their leaders and they've got there is fantastic. You can't argue with the quality and the craft and the games that they delivered and that they're working on now. Kudos and hats off to them. I think there's a certain kind of game that generates an anticipation. It becomes this tentpole moment. It's a game that fits that intersection of everybody can play, and it's a big world that you can inhabit. I think those type of games are important, and certainly it's been a place where we have not been out in front. We haven't really had that sort of one-to-one with Sony." Booty said he didn't want to get drawn into discussing what Microsoft's response to Sony's Uncharted or Horizon Zero Dawn might be, if it is even making projects like that, but overall, Booty said Microsoft is keen to create the types of games that Sony is known for. He said, and I quote, I don't necessarily want to get into what's our Uncharted, what's our Horizon Zero Dawn, what's our this, what's our that. I don't think that does anybody any good. What are those games that have universal themes and have a big world that people want to get lost in? That have really well realized characters and high production values? That's absolutely what we want to go after. Now, Booty also went on to mention that his boss Phil Spencer recently discussed Microsoft's plans to acquire more game development studios. Microsoft already has 23 internal game development teams, but the company is clearly hungry for more. If you remember, Microsoft actually had an internal team review The Last of Us Part 2, and they offered high praise as well. So you know that they look at Sony as like a de facto company when it makes these games. And what they said about The Last of Us Part 2 is absolutely fantastic. They said, and I quote, "We were frequently stunned by the quality of the game's visuals, something that sadly happens these days, or seldom happens these days." The review from Microsoft continues, "It's even more impressive considering the game features 2 separate playable characters with different groups of allies in different locations, along the flashback sequences taking place years before. While walk-in simulator chapters may not be what gamers are expecting, they are exceptionally well done and really show what other games, especially pure native adventure games, should be aspiring to accomplish with their own dialogue, presentation, and voice acting." Now, when it comes to visuals, the visual quality and attention to detail in The Last of Us 2 is absolutely best in class, basically in every area. And the overall presentation is significantly ahead of anything that other teams have been producing on console or PC. In summary, The Last of Us Part 2 is an exceedingly rare video game where what it accomplishes in moving forward the art of narrative storytelling in video games as a medium ultimately outweighs whether or not everyone quote-unquote likes it, or even if everyone has fun playing it. Now, when it comes down to it, we don't know how far along Microsoft will be when it comes to actually having quality and big-time AAA Xbox exclusives. But we know definitively that exclusives matter. Look no further than the less than stellar growth of Xbox Game Pass itself to see how important having well-known blockbusters actually is to an ecosystem. It doesn't matter if you're Game Pass, it doesn't matter if you're PlayStation Now, it doesn't matter if you're Netflix, it really doesn't matter what you are. If you don't have quality content that attracts people, that really goes out of your way to sort of bring in people that maybe have never played what you're offering before, then it doesn't matter. You need something the quality of a Last of Us 2. It doesn't have to be that same type of thing, but you need something on that quality, and that's what I'm seeing from Matt Booty. That's what I've seen in the past from Phil Spencer when they've mentioned these types of things. They really want people to kind of realize that, hey, we're not going to have a God of War ripoff, but we want something of that caliber, that quality, that, you know, that ability to impress people right from the start, high production qualities and things like that. And Microsoft has really lacked that. I can remember back to when the Gears of War 5 launched, and I had a code for it, and I downloaded it to review it, and like I couldn't progress the game. It was all buggy, and I just remember thinking to myself, this would never happen to like a big Sony production, right? Like I've never had these type of issues in a God of War or Detroit Become Human or a Spider-Man or a Ghost of Tsushima or a Last of Us Part 2 or an Uncharted 4. I couldn't imagine having these types of issues. But here I was on Xbox with supposedly a big tentpole franchise, and obviously it was not going to work out that well. So with that being said, I do feel like what Matt Booty here is saying is he's striving to get Microsoft to be on the same level of those games, even if they're not trying to copy, and that's admirable at best. But in doing so, he kind of very much admits the shortcomings of Xbox itself, and therefore makes it very clear that if you're going on games alone, PlayStation has the more quality games and the better content. With that being said, thank you so much for watching one of my videos. If you enjoyed it, maybe consider liking. Thanks for watching. Rack 'em up, fact 'em up, Crapgamer 'em up, Crapgamer out.